In emergency management, the definition of a stakeholder is any person or entity with a vested interest in the survival or recovery of a given community.
This is the Stakeholder Prepping Podcast, where the tactical comes from the practical, and today, you become your own stakeholder.
Here are your hosts, Chris and AC.
Welcome back to Stakeholder Prepping, where you, yes, you, are the stakeholder in your own survival. And today, we're going to do something completely different. Instead of just talking about prepping concepts, we're actually going to do one.
Yeah, this is kind of fun. We're gonna do a tabletop-y exercise here and just go through a scenario, and then we're gonna break it down, kind of the what would you do sort of thing. I think this is pretty exciting. But first, can I talk about last week with Jennifer? That was awesome.
Well, it was fantastic.
That was great. And she sent us a bunch of books. So, yeah, I'd love to give some of those away. If anybody wants to, I don't know, just tell us you listened to the episode. Give us a good quote from the episode or something. I'd love to send you one of her books. And she gave us a discount code good on her website. I think our code is stakeholder10, but she gave us a discount code. So if anybody wants to buy any of her books, they're impressive. We've got some. I'm just impressed with them. She does a very good job of breaking down the sort of off-grid medicine in a way that's consumable and understandable. And then the food stuff is just crazy. Like I didn't know you could make cream cheese out of powdered milk. That's kind of the coolest thing ever.
Right? I've been reading through Armageddon Pharmacy, and
Yeah.
some of the stuff in there is just a vast wealth of knowledge that's right at your fingertips. It's a great book to have. Even if you don't get a copy from us, use the discount code and you'll thank yourself.
Yeah, and I think this episode is sort of a continuation of the kind of family planning thing, right? We talked a little bit about preparedness with children, and we talked to Jennifer about how she's gone to help her family prepared by writing all these books about off-grid medicine and sort of the survival foodie stuff that kids will actually eat. And this episode is kind of that same thing. Get around the dining room table and just storyboard out an actual event and talk about what you would do if something happened.
And this is something that you can do, like you said, storyboard it out. You can have almost a family game night or dinner conversation, things like that. And if you come up with, a question, there is the time to ask it. What are we doing in this situation? What are we doing in this situation? How are we going to plan for contingencies and emergencies when something else is going on? And really, I think that's where, if you decide to run a tabletop gaming exercise like we're about to do, this is something that you actually can enter into a Mad Gear contingency planner. So if you've got your Mad Gear supplies and you've got your emergency cards, once you kind of solidify that plan, you can go ahead and write it down, and then everybody is familiar with it already.
Yeah, this is one of those things where if you're going to run this tabletop exercise with the family, then it's got to be something that's high up there on your risk matrix, or it doesn't make sense, right? I think that's kind of what we're talking about. So if you've got those things on your risk matrix that are more likely to happen, like, hey, an earthquake just struck, what are we going to do? Because we live in California and we're going to fall off the coastline or something. Then those are the things that you would have in your Mad Gear contingency planner. And the family can just flip it open and say, okay, what are we going to do in this scenario? If the kids are at school, what are they going to do? If the bus route home is blocked, if you're at work, what are you going to do if you're on the 10th floor of your office building, those kinds of things. So depending on where those things fall in your risk matrix, then those are the things that you're going to kind of storyboard out in your contingency planner. So everybody in the family knows exactly what to do when that thing happens, right?
Precisely. And tabletop planning does not have to be boring. We're going to show you exactly what what we mean by that. It's this is kind of an interactive, add a twist, and make sure that it's something that is winnable for your first go around. But you can easily go down the rabbit hole and start to throw in little monkey wrenches here and there and make sure that this is a very difficult scenario by the end of it. And it's almost like a Dungeons and Dragons game if you want to think of it that way.
Right. This is the kind of the choose your own adventure risk matrix scenario y thing. And it's funny what you said about winning. I like that. Like winning just means that we all survive, right? That's winning is everybody gets out alive.
Right. It's not, oh, I just hit the jackpot and we never have to worry about money anymore. That's major league winning. This is everyone survived, we're all going home.
Right. Yeah, that's like hashtag winning. No, we're just talking about everybody lives. And speaking of winning in that type of scenario, winning in that idea, that's kind of what the game Ravine is all about. And I know we talked about this 2 episodes ago, but this is funny that the guys at Ravine, I think it's Stellar Games is the name of the company, they liked our episode and kind of the shout out, and they gave us a handful of copies of the game to give away. And just anybody that didn't listen to the episode, or in case you don't remember, it's a card game, like a family card game where you sort of simulate we've crashed on an island and we need to survive to the end. And winning in that game sense is everybody survives. Like if you win, everybody gets out alive. And it's sort of a bit of a social game where it's not you against everybody else. It's everybody together kind of, you know, wins or everybody sort of loses. And the idea is that everybody gets off the island alive. But we did get we got a couple of sets of the Ravine card game, and anybody that's likes to do family game night or, has kids that they like to play the different non-digital, non-video games with, this is a really fun one, and we'd like to give some away. So I don't know, Chris, what do you think? Like, we'll go through our tabletop scenario, and maybe if you've got a tabletop scenario that you have run with the family, or you have a cool idea of a scenario to run, maybe shoot us an email, and we'll give you a free copy of Ravine.
Yeah, I like that. If you like our tabletop exercise and listening to us kind of play it out, and if you come up with your own that you either are going to run with your family or have already run with your family, just shoot us an email, a couple of paragraphs on, what the scenario was, how it worked out, what you learned from it, and we will happily send you a copy of Ravine. We've got a limited number available, so um, definitely work fast on your typing, but we'll definitely get one to you. I like that.
Yeah, we've got a couple of copies. But anyway, that was really cool of them to send us a handful of copies of the game, because it really I don't think they think of it as a prepping game, but it really is. Anytime you're talking about um, sort of conserving resources with the family and the almost gambling on what's going to happen next in a scenario, that's prepping.
It really absolutely is. And prepping is one of those things where you're kind of marshaling and gaining your resources and your skills and your mentality so that you can guard yourself and your family against the unknown. And we obviously don't know what that unknown is. If I had that kind of crystal ball, I promise I would be a lottery winner. But that's really what prepping at its core is guarding yourself against the unknown. Every time you jump into the car and put your seatbelt on, you're guarding yourself against an unknown accident. Is it today? Is it tomorrow? Is it 20 years from now? You don't know, so you prep every time.
Yeah, that's right. And I like the seatbelt analogy because it's one of those things that it takes almost no time and effort, but it could save your life And maybe you'll never be in that scenario where it does save your life. Maybe you'll go through hopefully, you'll go through your entire life and never get in a car accident. But when you do that, you're not going to look back and go, man, do you know how many hours I spent putting on my seatbelt? I regret that.
Right?
Like you're never going to do that. And it's the same way when you carry a gun every day. I know you carry a firearm, Chris, often. I often do too. I don't want to get in a gunfight. And when I look back at my life and go, I never had to get in a gunfight, I'm not gonna be like, dang it, and I carried that gun everywhere. Like it's insurance, but you hope to never use it. That's the whole point of insurance, and that is kind of the whole point of prepping. And so by going through these exercises, by going through these tabletop exercises and say, what would you do in this scenario? You're really hoping that the entire family will never have to use this information. But if they do, they've got it, and you're going to run like a well-oiled machine.
That's a great way to look at that. So let's get started with it. If you want to kind of lay out our scenario here.
Yeah, so we came up with one, and obviously there's a billion different scenarios, and it really depends like what's going to happen on your risk matrix. So I would love to hear from other people what their kind of tabletop scenario with the family is like. But here is the scenario: is you're at home, it's midwinter, you live somewhere where it is cold out, where it does get below freezing, where the water gets hard, and you are home with your family. Let's say spouse, two kids, dog. This is the American dream right here. And it's Sunday evening, maybe it's movie night. The sun's going down, and suddenly the power goes out. That was very Scooby-Doo Mystery Machine-y.
Right?
You're gonna like rip your mask off and be like, it was Chris the whole time.
Oh,
Oh, we would have got
you
away with it
meddling
too.
kids.
Meddling kids.
So I do think to kind of continue this, I think it's fair to say that at first you kind of think it's one of those flicker moments where the power is just down and then it'll come back up.
Sure.
But now this is an outage that's lasting and long enough that the house is starting to cool down. You can feel it. So the kids are asking what's happening. The dog is pacing, probably needs to go outside or you forgot dinner. And it's about 20, let's call it 20 degrees outside.
Mm-hmm.
So it's chilly. You can't just open the windows and hope for the best here, right?
Yep. So that's the setup. So let's kind of play that out. What's your first move, Chris?
Yeah, so step one for me, it's light illumination. So flashlights, lanterns, headlamps, everyone needs that safe light, whether it's a glow stick or a flashlight on the countertop pointing at the ceiling so it reflects back down, or
Mm-hmm.
one of our stakeholder prepping diffusers on our
Ooh,
navigation card.
That's a good one.
Those work really, really well, surprisingly. I
Right.
was not expecting that when we designed them, but I love that that's a feature. And I think for me, the first step is going to be light because somebody trips over a chair and bangs their knee or breaks a toe or something like that. And now you've just complicated a power outage with a medical crisis.
Yeah, good call. And we talked about this, the prepping with the kids, right? So it's not just the illumination, but it's illumination for everybody. Like I like the light band headbands. Those are just awesome because you're not just blinding the person you're looking at. They provide kind of this natural light. So I go for the light band, but you may be more of a tactical light with the Kubotan guy. And the kids need a flashlight or a headlamp that's going to work for them. And I like what you said about putting the chem lights on the dogs, like the chem light necklaces for the dogs, because then you're exactly right. You're going to trip over somebody. So having not just illumination for you, not just illumination for your spouse, not just illumination for the kids, but everybody having the illumination for the dogs too. So cracking open the little chem light, putting on the dog's neck, and having the little doggy rave.
Yeah. And you
It's-
don't want to
it's-
give your
it's-
kid a welcome to the disco.
Oh, I see discotheque, yeah.
You don't want to have your kids running around with like a 5D mag light beating the shit out of your shins every time you walk past. But
Right.
maybe the bluey or the less dense material flashlight. So if they do hit you with it, it's not gonna break open your skin. I want to stay away from candles in this scenario because
That's a good call, right? Candles can be tempting because candles are cool. It's a little bit of ambiance. Uh, play a little Barry White, but it's yeah, they can be dangerous, right? To just go straight for the candle. Especially with kids and pets running around, things like that. For me, I go obviously the light. You need light before you can do anything. I go immediately into conservation mode and I lose power a lot, so this is kind of my jam, but uh I'm like, "Hey, let's not open the refrigerator constantly now. Like let's go into that conservation mode. Is the cell phone fully charged or do I need to grab the power brick out and charge the cell phone?" So let's go into conservation mode. That's kind of where I go first. And then I go usually towards the emergency power, right? So have like that generator. Do you need to turn it on? Are you a solar generator person where you just have the little, box of energy that may not charge up during the day all the way, but hey, if this is just a one night thing, we could even plug the TV in and just go back to what we were doing. For me, I've got like the battery inverter system. I go out and turn the big battery thing on and I don't even notice the world ended. So I love to do that stuff. But are you gonna turn the generator on? When you think about that, it's loud. If you're somebody with a gas generator and you're like, I'm prepared, I got a gas generator, I've got maybe it's plumbed to your house with natural gas, so it can just run indefinitely. But you are now a little more of a target. Now, with the generator on, now one, all the neighbors know you have power. And two, it is kind of loud. So you are attracting a little bit of attention. If you're one of those, solar generator people, the downside is it doesn't have all that much energy. You can't just run everything like the electricity's on, but it's quiet and people won't necessarily know that you have power. And this is kind of a throwback to a bunch of episodes we've done, right? We've done a lot of this where what are the things you need for a blizzard? What do you need things you need for a hurricane? So we've talked about these things that you need. But yeah, having that power source and what are you going to do with it after you get that get your lights and, kind of get your wits about you, get your bearings.
yeah, and I think that's a really good point. And for our listeners, if we were to pause right now, ask yourself if the power went out in your home right this second, how many flashlights could you put your hands on in 30 seconds?
Oh, right. Or that's exactly right. Do you know where the flashlights are? Are the batteries charged? I mean, I'm guilty of this and I'm like a pro level prepper that I've got flashlights everywhere. I know right where they are, but I'm not charging them every time I use them. So
Yeah.
do those flashlights have batteries in them? And if they do, how charged are those batteries? With the generator aspect of it, how much gas is in the generator? How old is that gas? Like, when's the last time you charged it? Is the battery for the generator charged up, or do you need to pull start that thing? Do you know where the propane tank is if it's a propane generator, or do you have to go steal the one out of your barbecue and haul that out to wherever your generator is? So, those are the kinds of things that are very easy to answer on a beautiful sunny day. But when it's pitch black and it's freezing and people are getting nervous, that's when maybe you don't really know where those things are. And a lot of this goes back to practicing your preps too. Like we talked about, let's say you do have the battery and the inverter set up. You've got the little cigarette lighter adapter that plugs in and you can, power some stuff. Is that inverter a pure sine wave or a modified sine wave inverter? And if you don't know what those things are I just said, it's probably a modified sine wave and it's not going to work your refrigerator.
Yep. Yep. So let's get back to our tabletop.
All right.
We've got a power outage. It's freezing outside. We have our lights in hand. So everyone in the house has a flashlight, headlamp, glow stick, something along those lines. What's
Yep.
next?
Well, next thing comes your communication. So we've got light, the house is secure still. Now, do we have comms? Like, is there cell coverage? Pull out your cell phone. Does that work right now? So is this a small little local power outage? Or is this maybe something bigger? And whether or not you have cell service will kind of help answer that question.
Very, very true and critically important because if it was something like an EMP
hmm
where your cell won't even turn on, that's a bigger problem entirely. If it's something where, somebody slid on black ice and ran into a transformer and they cooked the entire neighborhood. That's a one night, maybe 2 night event. If it's a really, really bad snowstorm, I've been in blizzards that were bad enough to knock out power to an entire city for 10 days. So kind of depends, but checking your weather app, maybe calling a neighbor, turning on your NOAA radio, check your communication avenues to figure out a broader picture of what's going on. Don't just stay inside the four walls of your living room.
That's a great call. And for this scenario, I'm going to say that it isn't like some Teotawaki event where, yeah, the cell phones don't work. Let's say the cell phones do work. Then you're right. You're right on track. Let's check the weather app. Let's, check in our neighbors. The NOAA radio is a great one. I like that Midland one. There's a Midland one that's pretty inexpensive, and it's got a hand crank in case you forgot the batteries or they died. And then it has like a two-way GMRS FRS radio, so like a short range little base station radio as well as the NOAA. That's a really cool one to have there. But so after that, we've got comms, we've got light, we're thinking about power. There's kind of those big three priorities, right? There's that warmth, food, safety thing. And in our prepper scenario, any scenario, I always fall back on the food, water, shelter, weapons, warmth, sanitation, and that last one is always going to be fitness, right? Like your mental and physical fitness. Those are things we can't really do much about right now. But those are the things you want to start thinking about: is that food, water, shelter, weapons, warmth. How am I going to keep everybody warm and fed and comfortable? And if we need to use the restroom, including the pets, how are we going to go about doing that?
Yeah. And this is really where it can get fun with the family because, as you're going through this, each person around the table can kind of play themselves. And you can ask, what would you do first? Kids tend to get really, really into this part because they want to be the ones to grab the flashlight or set up blanket forts or, you know, do things to help out and keep engaged. So you can kind of go through some prompts and get kids, family members involved without being completely boring about it, you know?
Right. Yeah, exactly. You can give those prompts like, okay, lights are out. What's the first thing you grab? Like I said, I like the light band headlamp. First thing I grab. I know I keep that thing charged, and then maybe give everybody their lights, put the chem light collar on the dog for your little doggy rave. But that's kind of prompt one. Okay, so everybody's got light. That's something to think of first. And if you haven't ran the scenario with people in your family, you may get some really bizarre things, right? Like off the bat, it's pitch black in the house. What do you do? And somebody's going to be like, I don't know, make brownies and lock the doors. Like somebody might just not have thought about the things that you need to focus on first because they just haven't been in that scenario before.
Right. And it could be, the house is getting colder. What do we do to conserve heat? Where do we sleep tonight? Or we need to eat. What food can we prepare without the microwave, without lighting the stove, because it's an electric oven or something like that? What can we prepare on hand? And there are no really wrong answers. It's just designed to spur discussion. So it may sound like a silly answer, but if that's what somebody was thinking and that was their first instinct in an actual scenario, that's probably pretty close to what they would do if they didn't have any guidance.
For sure. And yeah, the preparing the food thing is just a great thing to think about. Like you said, Chris, you're pretty well prepared. And I think a couple episodes ago you had talked about, having the power outage picnic, and you have a gas stove. So no big deal. Turn that thing on and you can make food. But somebody who is not as prepared of you may not think about the fact that the electronic ignition on the stove wouldn't work. And so if you don't have a lighter or matches close by, then you'd just be pumping the house full of propane with no way to start it.
Yeah, and that'll kill you.
And that will eventually kill you. So then it's okay. We need to prepare food without power. Are we going to break out some MREs and find a rock or something? Are we going to, fire up the camp stove because now we need to make sure we have adequate ventilation? Or maybe it's kind of a granola bar dinner kind of night. Um, you mentioned the house is getting cold. Where are we going to sleep? That's a huge one. And do you have the gas space heaters like the My Buddy propane heater? Because if you do, you need to make sure that you have those operational like oxygen depletion sensors or CO alarms, and the batteries need to be charged and working in those things. Because if you bring out your carbon monoxide alarm and you bring out your propane heater and you crack the window and you test that CO alarm and it doesn't do anything, well, then you're really not gonna start that little My Buddy propane heater, are you?
Well, most people still would and just risk it for the
R
biscuit, but
right, right, and then you're gonna
I
make the
don't know.
news. Yeah, then you're gonna be a news story, you're gonna be a statistic. A family of 4 and their pets died when it got freezing out and the power went out.
Yeah,
But n
this is
I
important to think all the way through.
right, and I wanna throw one at you when it starts talking about getting colder and, "All right, we're all gonna huddle somewhere so we can stay warm. It's 20 degrees out. You know what? If we got blankets, nobody's gonna die." But your pipes can freeze. So, what are you gonna do in that scenario? Are you gonna open the cabinets and expose the pipes and then try to somehow, keep the main level of your house warm so your pipes don't freeze? Are you gonna let, uh, your faucet drip overnight? Are you in a situation where if you lose power, you also lose water? So, you wanna think about those things before it just happens to you.
And I really like how you brought up the pipes freezing and what you can do about that. Because, yes, you can kind of run the water just a slow, not a drip, but a trickle. You
Mhm.
can run the pipes overnight and prevent, them from completely freezing up. It can still happen. If you get enough ice blockage in there, it can still happen whether you've got the pipes open or not. But
Yeah.
opening every faucet, every tub in the house, and potentially letting your toilet run, that can make an impact as well. But what do you do with all that water? Should you be collecting it in jugs like old orange juice containers or old milk jugs that have been rinsed out? Should you be collecting that? Because even if your pipes don't freeze, you can still go under a boil notice because a whole bunch of other pipes froze around the city. And now it's affecting your water supply when the power does come back on. We've had that happen a few different times.
Or your pipes can, the freezing of the pipes is one thing, but the pipes breaking because they're frozen, that's a whole 'nother different animal. So, yeah, being able to collect that water, maybe you leave the faucet dripping or trickling in one of the bathtubs, and that's where you've got your $26 water bob off of Amazon, and you're collecting that water. So, those kinds of things. Don't just let it drip if you could actually collect it, because that is the prepper way.
And maybe you do huddle everyone together in the living room, kind of set up the tent so you have an extra small layer of insulation. If you have a wood burning fireplace or even a gas burning fireplace, getting that going. If you do need the candles, this is where your emergency Jesus candle is going to come in very handy. But condensing your space and having everybody sleep inside of a tent inside of the living room, that's going to conserve heat and you won't feel as much of that biting cold. You're still going to have to take the dog out to go pee. You're still going to have to open up the door and necessitate your daily functions, but it's minimizing your overall exposure to that cold temperature as it's dropping.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And having the tent set up in the living room, that's kind of cool. Maybe it'll that might calm the kids down a little bit because now you're just indoor camping. That sounds fun.
Yeah. You can go
Yeah,
camping any time of year as long as the tent will fit in the living room.
that's right. You go camping anywhere and setting up the little couch fort and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, you're right. Thinking about that, if it is just a day or two, like you said, in a not SHTF event, you've lost power for 10 days in the snow. I've gotten close. I think I've lost power for 6 before in the snow, but that'll ruin your week at that point. You're really starting to kind of change how you live. If it's snowy outside and it's 20 degrees and you don't have power for a week, you're really going to start changing your routines and your habits and things like that. I mean, you're going to start thinking about let's conserve food. You're going to start thinking about, are we cutting the dog open like a tauntaun and crawling inside, Like things could get rough for 6 or 10 days.
All I know is after that major storm, I believe it was 1997, but it was an
Mhm.
October snowstorm, and I still didn't have my Spanish homework done by the time it was time to go back to school. So, yeah, I spent 2 weeks playing fuck off in the blanket fort and didn't get my homework done. So, yay me.
Yep. Well, I mean, I don't think they have a word for snow in Spanish, so it's not your fault.
I think it's nieve.
Yeah. Oh, sure, there's
My
something.
pronunciation is going to be way off because it's been forever, but nieve, I believe.
Uh,
But let's jump back to our scenario here, and
okay.
we've got the power out. Sun has gone down. We know it's cold. We have our light. We're saying that we have communication, so it's just a local outage. We've got warmth. We've got everyone together. We're safe. And let's say that we have eaten. We were able to get our MREs out of the garage and everybody got some wheat snack bread. Let's twist it up a little bit. So every good tabletop exercise needs some sort of twist or it's just not going to work the same.
Right. Let's throw the curveball. So the curveball would be it's 11 p.m. now, and outside you hear a loud bang. And when you look outside, a car has slid on the icy road and crashed into a utility pole near your house. So a few minutes later, there's a knock at your door and the driver's there, say, shaken up, maybe injured. Now what?
This is where things can get very real in a tabletop exercise. It's not just about your family, it's about helping someone else now. So there are several options that kind of come to mind. One, kick him to the curb, get out of here. You have no use to me. Two, call 911. It might work if there's somebody in the area, but it may not. It may be enough of a delayed response that they need help now and they may not survive, especially if the temperature drops into the zeros or single digits. They may not survive that by the time 911 gets there. Or let them in. Those are kind of my off the top of my head, those are my 3 options. What do you got?
No, you're exactly right. And obviously, you can call 911 whether or not you decide to do anything about it. But like you said, that's not just to call 911 and okay, well, scenario's over. We called 911. You still have a person bleeding at your door. So yeah, you can call 911, but like we've always said, relying on the government as part of your PACE model is really not the right way to go. So if you call 911, fine. But that doesn't absolve you of the situation in front of you immediately. So, yeah, if you're trained and equipped, sure, you can render first aid. And then you have to decide whether or not uh, you're going to let that person inside. You know nothing about this person. And this is really where you got to start kind of leaning on the gut feeling about things, right?
Yeah, this is do you have your questions in mind?
Right. Right. Yeah, we talked about that. We talked about those questions in our psychology episode of is it more important to be right or is it more important to be kind? And I think this has, in this scenario, I think this has a ton to do with just your gut feeling about this person. And here's the twist. Let me throw this at you, Chris, is that this person at your door, are they a threat? Let's say in your gut, you think maybe. But would this person become a bigger threat if you don't let them in?
And that's the $1,000,000 question right there that's gonna help protect you and your family and your property all at the same time. And it's a
Right.
tough one to answer. It's a
It's a
very, very difficult one.
it's always going to be, obviously it's going to be about your gut feeling. It's going to be very scenario specific. It's a huge question. And like we said, we talked about this in our psychology episode, but let's say you have somebody that maybe you don't feel great about. Maybe you're 50-50. Maybe you're like, I don't know. Maybe this guy is strong. Maybe you're like, I don't know if he's armed, whatever it is. But if you turn this person away, now that person, they know where you live, they've got a peek inside, they know what's going on inside your house. Maybe they know that you have warmth and food and electricity and things like that. Did that person just become a bigger threat if you turn them away? And that's such a wild card because there's no right answer there.
I will tell you that regardless of who it is, whether it's, you know, 6'7", 320-pound linebacker for the Detroit Lions, or it's a 5', 110-pound woman who is on her way home from work or whatever, does not matter. When I answer that door, I'm going to have a firearm in hand.
Right, right. But you just have to think about that. Okay, so what are you going to do then? Is it like, yeah, you can come in, but you're going to have to put these zip ties on.
And if they say no, that may give you more information about the scenario. It may also be that they can't because that's where their injury is.
Right. Or you just really like throw a curveball at him and you're like, you can come in, but you have to put this Chemelite necklace on like the dogs have.
I'm tracking you.
Welcome to my disco.
Just
So
snapping a chem light and duct taping it to the back of their shirt so you can keep eyes on them everywhere. I like it. But
now I know where you are.
for the listeners at home or in the car or wherever you're listening along, I mean, this is kind of that perfect discussion point. So what would you and what would your family decide? Are you letting this person in, or are they just left to their own devices and out to the wild cold? Because having this already set in the back of your mind as an option or what your scenario is, that's going to save you critical time and keeping the door open to talk to them, letting all of the warmth that you have built up exchange with that cold air. So you're cooling down your house the longer you talk to them.
Yeah, that's true too. Just leaving the door open, like, all right, well, let's talk about this. And I think there's so many people. I think there's a lot of preppers that are just like, are gonna be like, no, get off my lawn, and if you don't, I'll shoot you. And it's, man, it's just, that's just not how the real world works, like that. Those things are not an option. You can't just tell somebody they have to leave and then shoot them when they don't. You just can't do that. So it's just, there's no right answer here. There really isn't.
And that's what makes this so much fun, is to be able to play the devil's advocate. And let's kind of say we've checked the driver. There was no major bleeding.
Hmm.
They're shaken. Obviously, they got into a car accident. Are you letting them in or kicking them out?
Sure. I say, so, okay. So I say we let them in. I mean, if they come to your home, it's cold out. They're not going anywhere. It's one person. I think that we're letting that person in. And I'm just going to go down, I guess, the probability matrix here is that if this was someone intent on doing you harm, are they going to throw this huge scenario at you where they like fake crash their car into a fake telephone pole and have a fake injury just so they can get inside your house on a 20-degree day? Like, I don't think so. And I think people are watching too many like murder mystery movies, but yeah, I'm going to take this person at face value. If there is honestly a car accident outside and a single injured person comes to my home in this kind of scenario that you laid out, I'm probably not going to assume that they're just up to, nefarious stuff. And I'm probably going to let them in.
Yeah, unless you're on some sort of high-level CIA list. I
Right.
I'm in your boat. So my vote is yes. They're going to be safer with us. We've got extra blankets. We've got some extra food. We've got some first aid. All of it can be tended to. So may as well let them in, and get them warmed up, get them to the point where they're healing and move forward.
And start
Uh,
asking those questions from Airplane, like, "Do you like gladiator movies?"
I think this is really where your family's emotional values are going to
Mhm.
come into play. Are you prepared to help somebody else or just yourselves? And sometimes, if it's bad enough, it could come down to we just don't have the resources to help you.
Right. Yeah, and if you're a real prepper, you do have the resources. That's the whole point, right? You've got extras because, 1 is none and 2 is 1 and 3 is a spare. So, let's assume that you've got the resources to help somebody because you should. You should have the extra resources. So, this can be kind of the teaching moment even for the kids. You can say, "Hey, look, see, this is why we prepare. We're not just taking care of ourselves, but we're prepared to take care of other people."
I like that. I like that a lot. So, moving on, now we've got the family plus one guest in the living room, and we're going to say, for the sake of this, that the dog gets along with them. I will say that is another big key is if the dogs don't like them, I don't trust them.
Oh, 100%, man. I don't trust people who don't like dogs, but I definitely trust dogs that don't like people. 100%.
Yeah. And we'll say the dog is kind of confused, but happy to have the extra company. One extra set of hands for scritching is always a good thing for them. Kids may be a little bit nervous, but they're keeping calm. Um, and this is kind of the point of the tabletop play is you practice your adaptability through all of this. So we had a power outage, we grabbed our light, we got ourselves back up to warm. Even though the sun is down, we're fed, we're happy. Somebody came to the door, needed help, and we offered to help them. They're fed, they're healing. Now we can move on with our next step, right? So let's fast forward a little bit, and we'll say that by morning, the power has come back on. So the house is warming up. The driver is very grateful and gracious and thanking you consistently until they become annoying. And the family, the dog, everybody made it through. Sun is coming up and the power kicks back on. Now you can hear your generator not being needed, or you can hear the heater kicking on, things like that, right?
Yeah, in my neighborhood, it's funny actually. We hear the generators, and when the power's back on because the generators start turning off. When you lose power and everybody's starting to shut the generators down, you know that the power's come back on. But all right, so you made it through the night. Now, do you stay up all night? Where are you on that? You got a weirdo in your home, not a weirdo. You have a stranger in your home. Do you take shifts? Do you stay up all night, or do you just like go to bed and just hope they're not gonna like steal all your Pokemon cards?
No, this is something where between the present adults that are part of the family, so my wife and I were taking shifts, kind of rolling that traditional fire guard that we got so used to doing in the military,
Right.
both of us. Um, I'm not leaving somebody unattended, whether I see that they have a broken leg or not.
Yeah, I'm right. I'm 100% right there with you. Yeah, no, I'm staying up or some uh responsible adult in the house is staying up or you're taking shifts like you said cuz I grew up an only child. I just don't like people messing with my stuff. So, yeah, somebody's going to stay up and watch. But so we get to the morning, everything's okay. Um did we win?
Well, yes, but winning in a tabletop game, like we said, it means everyone's safe. The family worked together, learned what we need to do better next time. So, yes, we theoretically won this scenario. And if you want to really win it, you didn't realize that the person that you just saved is the mayor and they gave you a key to the city as a result of saving their life.
Oh,
There,
man,
you
I,
won.
I I didn't even think about the philosophical thing. This is like is that kid you killed, did he grow up and be Hitler? Did he grow up and say and cure cancer?
And there's no way to tell unless you try it.
Right. So
So,
this is Schrodinger's stranger that showed up at your house. We do know they're not that great of a driver, but that's the only thing we really know about them, I guess.
Schrodinger himself could show up at the door and you wouldn't know any difference.
And you
So
wouldn't know any different.
I think that's an important fact about this is you can play it both ways. Did we let them in? or did we not? And then what happens
Right.
based off of that? You can branch out. And this is just a short tabletop exercise that you and I are doing. This could go on for 3, 4, 5 hours on a family game night. And that's why I really like the Ravine game is it's already guiding you in that direction, but you can turn a lot of those scenario cards or the situation cards, they're called night cards. Um, but every time you draw a night card, you can actually pause and have a discussion on what do we actually do in this situation.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think I talked about this a couple episodes ago about that Ravine game. One of the things I like is it's not about like holding your cards, playing it close to the vest, and not showing everybody what you've got going on. It's really about an open discussion because it doesn't matter if everybody sees your cards during the gameplay. It's whether you win or lose, is whether or not you survive as a team or you perish as a team. So you can absolutely have those open and honest dialogues every time you flip over one of those night cards. And that's basically every night card is a gameplay. It's one evening that you spent alone, out in the forest or whatever. So that's what every one of those cards is. Every time you have a game play, you flip over a card and you say, okay, this is another night. What happened tonight? And it's not just like flipping that over and making a decision in the vacuum. It's flipping that over, and then you can have that open and honest discussion about what just transpired with your group. And that's exactly what we're talking about doing here, is we're having these open and honest dialogues with the group or family about what would you do. And then in the morning, now we're having that debrief, right? And that's the coolest thing, is now we're talking about, okay, in that choose your own adventure scenario, what are things that you would have done differently? What went well? What could we improve on? What supplies would you like to add? Like, we didn't think about having the igniter on the stove because we have a gas stove, so we just assumed we could turn it on. So having a more accessible lighter, having more than one lighter, because if somebody wants to light some candles and you want to light the stove and make dinner. So little things like that. Maybe having a more accessible backup battery to start the generator. If your generator doesn't have a pull start, maybe it only has an electric start. And since you never run that thing except when you lose power once a year, if that battery's dead, well, now, okay, it's 20 degrees out. I've got to start the car and I've got to jump the generator in order to get the generator running. Like all of those sort of things you can really go through in a tabletop exercise, depending on how far down the rabbit hole you want to go.
Absolutely. And you start with kind of your overarching goal in mind. We need to survive the night. Well, in order to do that, we need to turn on the generator. In order to do that, we need to get the fuel out of the garage. In order to do that, we need to open the garage. We don't have power for the electric opener, so that has to be done manually. We have to move the vehicle out of the way so that we can grab the gas. All you kind of work backwards from your general goal and see what goes right and what doesn't. For example, if your phase one, grabbing the flashlights, if the kids run into the kitchen and open up the junk drawer and stab themselves on the toothpicks that they left out in the junk drawer because that's where the toothpicks and the flashlight go, now you have identified a critical error in your planning or your organization, or maybe just having the flashlight on the counter permanently instead of in the drawer. That's
Absolutely. Yeah. The junk drawer is like, that's the catch-all. And you've got your flashlights and maybe the batteries are charged, but you're exactly right. It's pitch black and you're digging through that thing and all you're getting is soy sauce packets and thumbtacks.
yeah. And maybe you break one of those leftover ketchup packets from McDonald's or something, and a 4-year-old is going to feel it. It's going to feel wet. It's going to feel a different temperature, and it's going to be red when they shine the flashlight on it, and they're going to freak out.
And they're running through the house getting ketchup everywhere.
I mean, it's probably better than Sharpie on the walls, but
Sure.
it's still not great.
I love
But
in our scenarios that every single child is just an absolute hellion. Like,
Yes.
And then what they're going to do, these kids.
Just Mindless heathens bent on destruction.
Exactly.
Not too far off for a couple of kids, I know, but
I think you're right. Yeah. So kind of there you have it. That's kind of that family tabletop exercise that you can run. And, we did this in under an hour, and I think we touched on most of the things, but you're right, kind of working it backwards. Like, okay, I want to turn the generator on, and you can throw that. All right, well, the battery's dead. Okay, well, I have to go charge that battery, which means I probably have to use the car to do that. Do I have jumper cables? I need to get, like you said, I need to get the car out of the garage. Well, what if there's 3 feet of snow on the ground and the generator's parked in front of the car and you can't back the car out of the garage? So you've got to start thinking about those kinds of things, throwing those scenarios during a tabletop exercise so the whole family can kind of help you storyboard that out and problem solve in real time.
and if you really want to get more in depth with this, um, you could talk to somebody who's familiar with how Dungeons and Dragons works, and they can help to kind of get you into the mindset of using a dice roll. Okay, there's roll the dice. If it's, 5 or below, it's 2 inches of snow on the ground. If it's 6 to 10, it's a foot. If it's over 10, it's 2 feet. And if it's, 17, 18, 19, 20, okay, you've got 4 feet of snow on the ground. And you can kind of roll those random predictors and indications into your scenario on whether something that you did worked or did not work, or what your opening conditions are. You can randomize that just with a 20-sided D&D dice.
Yeah, you cannot predict the weather all that well in some of these kinds of scenarios. You're exactly right. Who knows? It might be somewhere between 2 and 4 feet of snow. And that's just a vastly different amount of snow. And like, I've got one that it doesn't get very, very cold where I am, but on occasion it does get cold. We've had single digits, and I've noticed that when you get down into single digits, there are things that stop working at single digits that I just would not have known. Like I have a gate that it's powered off batteries, but the batteries are constantly undercharged. The idea is that when you lose power, the gate will still open a handful of times. Well, the little batteries that are in that gate, they work at 20 degrees, but they don't work at 8 degrees. So
Interesting.
there's things like that that you just don't think about. I've got a little camp trailer that has batteries in it, and I can run a lot of stuff. It's got a nice inverter. I can run a microwave in that thing. I mean, I can pull quite a bit of power out of that. But those lithium iron phosphate batteries, they do not work or charge below freezing. And so you can kind of insulate them a little. You can turn the heater on in there. But yeah, when you're getting into like single digits, my life is drastically different than in double digits. 20's cold, but 6 is really, really cold.
Wuss.
I know. Well, I'm just saying, like, the electronics stop working. Like, the electronics in my life that I'm so prepared with, they just decide that they do not work when it gets that cold. And so then I have to have these contingencies. I have to think about, okay, I don't want to damage those batteries that I was going to rely on for electricity. Or I know that clearing the snow off of my solar panels is one that's come up that I didn't really think of initially. I'm like, cool, I got solar on the roof and I'm all good and I've got power. And so if the power goes out, then I've got an inverter and batteries and I'm good to go. But then you don't think about the fact that if I've got a foot of snow on top of my solar panels, then they aren't charging my batteries. And now I have to have some kind of contingency, some way to clear the snow off those solar panels. And I would have never thought of that until it happened to me once, until I got 2 feet of snow. And I said, holy crap, now I've got to find a way to clear snow off of the solar panels that are on my roof without dying.
And without lighting the solar panels themselves on fire, because I'm sure that you and your flamethrower thought, this is a great idea. It probably
Absolutely.
wasn't.
You're exactly right. Yeah. And you know what the thing is about flamethrowers? This is funny. For anybody, I don't know if anybody is a flamethrower fanatic or flamethrower adjacent out there, but you really can't melt that much snow with the flamethrower. It's crazy. Like the fuel just hits the top of the snow and it burns, but it doesn't really get that hot unless you're actually like you need some kind of fuel to catch on fire. So yeah, I've actually tried to de-ice the driveway with the flamethrower. It doesn't work very well.
It really doesn't,
It's
surprisingly.
it's crazy. I would have never thought, but yeah, you're just dumping once that gas is gone, then there's no more heat to generate. So yeah, that's the flamethrower is not as much of an answer as I thought it would be to most of my problems.
Shocker.
Shocker. So
The flamethrower is not a go-to for everything. Believe it or not.
I always thought the way to solve all of your problems was chainsaws and or fire, and it's turning out not to be that way. But let's wrap this one up. So I want to make sure that everybody knows we got some copies to this very cool game called Ravine, and we would like to give some of those to you. So send us in a fun scenario that you have done or you have thought about, a tabletop exercise with the family, and maybe Chris and I will storyboard that out on a future show. But send us one. We've got just a couple of copies of Ravine, but we'd like to give those away. It's a great game to, get every member of the family into prepping, get the younger members of the family just thinking about preparedness and resource management and things like that. And the guys over at I think it's Stellar Games who owns Ravine, they were nice enough to send us a handful of these, so we'd love to give those away. And then if you listen to our last episode with Jennifer Rader, uh, yeah, please write us in if there's one of her books you would like. We have a couple of copies from her, and then you could buy the whole library from her on her website. That's on our blog from last episode. But we have a coupon code where I think the first handful of listeners of ours will get 10% off of her books. So that's pretty cool. And then our friends at Mad too. I forget what our Mad coupon is. Do you remember, Chris?
Stakeholder.
Stakeholder, that's easy. Yeah, so we get 10% off with Mad, and I think that's just a really cool way to write out some of these contingencies. And when you start talking about throwing scenarios at each other, it's a very cool way to just write it out and say, if this happens, what do we do next? And what's our pace model? And just writing it out is just so valuable to just look at it. And then, the family can kind of start to poke holes in it for you.
Yeah, this doesn't all have to be doom and gloom. It can be a really fun way to build confidence and teamwork inside of your family. And you can do this with any type of scenario, whether it's a flat tire, a blizzard, or a power outage, whatever the case may be. Some people call these tabletop exercises. War games is another way to look at it, but develop your own, get the whole family involved, and have some fun with it. And we are going to be back with a completely new topic next week. Until then, remember that you are your own stakeholder, and we will see you then.